My brother texted you owe it to the family and demanded money for his house renovation, then banned me from Thanksgiving when I refused. So I used the property rights my dad left me to stop his scheme and expose his lies. I'm 33 years old, and for the most part, I try to keep my life pretty low drama. I like calm mornings, my woodworking hobby in the garage, and a good cup of black coffee with the window cracked open. I live about an hour outside the city in a modest but well-kept home I bought 5 years ago after a particularly grueling contract I landed with a tech firm. Nothing flashy, just something I could call mine. Which is funny now that I think about it, because apparently in my family, the word mine doesn't mean what I thought it did. Growing up, I was always the quiet one in the family. Not passive, just observant. My older brother Darren was the golden child, loud, charming captain of his high school football team. The kind of guy who could borrow your car, bring it back with an empty tank and a dented fender, and somehow make you feel like the jerk for mentioning it. Our parents adored him. Mom would light up when he walked in the room. Dad, a stern but loyal man who believed in hard work above all else, would puff up with pride every time Darren told one of his exaggerated stories at family dinners. And me, I was the one clearing plates, refilling glasses, staying out of the spotlight. That's not to say I had a bad childhood. It just meant I learned early that peace came from not rocking the boat. I studied hard, kept to myself, and when I got a scholarship to college, I packed my bags and never really looked back. Darren, meanwhile, stayed close to home, got into real estate, sort of. Technically, he flipped houses, but it was more like he conned people into investing in his projects, promised big returns. And when things fell through, he'd cry about bad luck and disappear until the heat cooled off. And yet, despite the repeated failures, our parents continued to bail him out. He's trying, Mom would say. He's just got a different path, Dad would add, conveniently forgetting that Darren's path had run through about a dozen investors' wallets. After Dad passed away 3 years ago, I thought maybe things would change. Maybe without Dad's blind loyalty, the scales would finally balance a little. But grief does strange things to families. Mom leaned even harder into defending Darren. And with Dad gone, Darren seemed to think he had inherited not just the house, but the authority, the unspoken family throne. I didn't argue, I just stayed out of it, sent flowers for birthdays, showed up for major holidays, and otherwise lived my own life. That is until last fall. It started with a text message, just 3 lines, but the entitlement practically screamed through the screen. You owe it to the family to help. House needs renovating. $68,000. Tom, you stepped up like Dad did. I blinked at the number. $68,000. Now, could you help, or would you be willing to chip in? Just you owe it. Like I was some sort of dormant ATM that finally needed to cough up my overdue fees. And what really got me was the way he worded it. Owe it to the family. As if I hadn't been paying for everything on my own since I was 19. As if I hadn't taken care of Mom's hospital bills when she slipped and fractured her hip last year without telling anyone. As if he had been the one working 60-hour weeks while I scrimped and saved and gave up every vacation for 5 years to get my house. I stared at the screen, trying to decide how to respond. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for a while before I finally replied, I'm not Dad. Simple, clear, not rude, just a boundary. The response came an hour later, but instead of a text, it was a voice note. Darren's voice cocky and just slightly slurred the way it always sounded after a couple drinks. Then don't bother showing up for Thanksgiving. I sat there for a few seconds listening to it again and again. That smug tone, that casual threat. It wasn't the words that hit me hardest. It was the assumption behind them. That my presence at Thanksgiving was something I should beg for. That the holiday wasn't about family, but about his control over who counted as family. That if I didn't cough up nearly 70 grand for his house, I was suddenly the outsider. And what really drove it home? Nobody else texted me. Not Mom, not our cousin Jenny, who always tried to play peacemaker. Not even our Uncle Ray, who usually replied to group chats with nothing but thumbs-up emojis. Silence. As if Darren had spoken for everyone. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I just stayed quiet. Thanksgiving morning came, and I spent it in my own kitchen cooking a small meal for one. Turkey breast, mashed potatoes, green beans, a pie I didn't even slice until the next day. There was a part of me that felt the familiar ache, missing the old holidays, the noise, the clatter of dishes, the cousins playing cards at the kitchen table. But a bigger part of me felt something else. Not sadness, not exactly anger either. Clarity. And that clarity hit full force around 4 p.m. when I opened my phone and saw Darren's latest post, a glossy shot of him and Mom standing in front of his newly renovated house. He was holding a wine glass. She was mid-laugh, and the caption read, "Grateful for what matters most." I should have closed the app, should have let it slide. but my eyes drifted to something in the photo. The deck. That deck. The one I built with Dad 12 years ago on one of the only weekends Darren actually showed up to help and left halfway through because he had a thing. The one I had quietly purchased from Dad before he passed. When the property line was adjusted and the deck technically crossed into our adjacent land, Darren had wanted to bulldoze it last year for some hot tub plan that never materialized. I stopped him with paperwork. He'd been furious, and now he was posing on it, toasting from it. That's when the idea started forming. Quiet at first, just a whisper, but growing stronger. I clicked on the comment section and typed, "That deck you're standing on, I own it. And the lock's already changed." Then I closed, the app took a long sip of wine and waited. And that's when everything started to unravel. I didn't expect the comment to do much, maybe a snarky reply, maybe Darren would delete it out of embarrassment. But what I didn't account for, what I should have known, was that Darren didn't take embarrassment lightly. Not when it was public, not when it came from me, and definitely not when it hinted that he didn't own every square inch of the castle he was trying to flex in front of. The first response came 5 minutes later, a reply to my comment. "Real classy, Alex. This is why no one wants you around." Then a flurry of laughing emojis from some of Darren's buddies, guys I hadn't seen since high school who still referred to women as chicks and thought fantasy football was a personality. I didn't reply, didn't need to. I just sat back and watched as my phone buzzed again. This time, a group chat I hadn't muted yet. Family Core. It was called, Darren had named it years ago. In it were Mom, me, Darren, and our two cousins, Jenny and Troy. Darren. Can we all just take a moment to appreciate how Alex decided to ruin a perfectly nice family post with his bitterness? Jenny replied a few minutes later, cautious as ever. "I think it just caught people off guard, that's all, Darren. No one asked him to pay anything. I asked if he wanted to contribute like Dad used to. Guess that was too much." I stared at the screen. That rewrite of history, that sly shift from "you owe it" to "do you want to?" Classic Darren. I didn't respond in the group chat either. Not yet. Instead, I spent the next few days in a weird headspace. Not angry exactly, just tired. Tired of the script. Darren makes a mess. Everyone walks on eggshells. I'm told to be the bigger person. And somehow, I always end up swallowing the insult to keep the peace. But that peace was starting to feel more like rot. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I got a call from Mom. I almost didn't answer, but I figured maybe she wanted to talk things out. Maybe she'd seen through Darren's nonsense and wanted to make things right. Nope. She started in soft, friendly even. "Hi, sweetheart. Hope you had a nice little Thanksgiving." Little I ignored the jab and just said it was quiet. Then she got to the point. "So Darren told me about the comment you made on his post." I said nothing. "He's really hurt, Alex. You embarrassed him in front of everyone." "I didn't know he was capable of embarrassment," I said flatly. She sighed like I was being difficult. "This isn't like you. You've always been the reasonable one, the mature one." And there it was. The same language she'd always used to gently nudge me back into compliance. The mature one, the one who could take the hits and smile. I didn't say anything. She continued, "I just think maybe you could apologize. You know how Darren gets. He takes things personally, and you do own the deck, but do we really need to make things so complicated?" I couldn't help myself. I laughed, not loudly, just a short, disbelieving exhale. "Mom, he sent me a $68,000 invoice and told me I owe it to the family. Then he told me not to show up for Thanksgiving, but I'm the one making things complicated." She went quiet for a moment, then said, "I know your father would have helped." And that's when something snapped. My voice dropped lower, steadier. "Yeah. Well, Dad also wouldn't have sent an invoice. He wouldn't have blackmailed me with Thanksgiving, and he wouldn't have used the phrase "owe it to the family" like it was a mafia movie, so don't bring him into this." Her voice turned sharp. "That's uncalled for." "No, what's uncalled for is pretending Darren didn't demand money and throw a tantrum when he didn't get it. What's uncalled for is you calling me to clean it up." Another long silence. Then in a smaller voice she said, "You know what? Maybe it's better if we all take some space." And she hung up. I sat there with the dial tone buzzing in my ear and thought that was new. I'd expected guilt, maybe even tears, but space, that was different. That felt deliberate. The following week, I didn't hear a word. No texts, no calls. I figured maybe things were cooling down. But then I got the envelope, no return address, just my name written in my brother's unmistakably sloppy handwriting. Inside was a printout of a revised invoice now formatted like a professional contract. At the top, shared family home renovation contribution agreement. Below that, a list of suggested contributions from each relative. $16,800 for me, $5,000 for Jenny, $2,000 from Troy, and nothing for Darren, of course, because he was managing the project. At the bottom was a line for my signature. I laughed out loud this time. It wasn't even disbelief anymore. It was surreal, like watching a bad parody of a family drama, except this was my actual life. That same day, I got a voicemail from Jenny. Hey, I just wanted to say I got one of those letters too. I'm guessing you did. This is getting weird. Call me. I did. We talked for over an hour. Jenny was always the only one in the family who saw things clearly, even if she didn't always say it aloud. But this time she was angry not just at Darren, but at how Mom was backing him. She said Troy had called her the night before asking if he was legally obligated to pay. He's not, obviously. And that's when Jenny told me something that made my stomach turn. Darren told me he's planning to take out a new loan against the house. She said he's expecting some family contributions to secure it. I think he's trying to use these signed letters as proof of income. I blinked. Wait, the house is in his name now. She hesitated. No. Well, part of it is he convinced Mom to co-sign on a deed transfer after your dad passed, said it would help with taxes or something. She signed without telling anyone. I only found out because he accidentally sent me the wrong attachment last month. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I always knew Darren was manipulative, but this was new territory, legal territory, and worse. He was dragging our mother into it, probably without her even realizing what she was signing. Jenny paused, then added, I think he's in deeper debt than he's letting on. The renovations, they're not just cosmetic. He's trying to flip it. He's planning to sell Mom's house. She doesn't know. At least I hope she doesn't. That night I barely slept. My mind was racing not just with anger, but with memories of the deck. Of Dad teaching me how to use a drill. Of Mom making lemonade while we worked in the sun of Darren, showing up late and leaving early, but still bragging to his friends that he built it himself. And now he wanted to sell it, sell the memories, sell the whole damn story and walk away richer while everyone else paid the bill. The next morning I woke up early, made coffee, pulled out the old file folder where I kept all the land documents Dad had passed on to me years ago. The deck, the land easement, the clause that protected my ownership of the outer lot, and I started to draft something, not just a letter, something bigger. I wasn't going to shout, I wasn't going to argue in the group chat, but I was going to make it very clear that this little family narrative Darren had been scripting. It was about to hit a major rewrite, and that was before I found out what he did with Mom's signature the week before. I didn't find out right away. It took a week of silence before the next storm hit, but when it did, it came hard and from someone I hadn't expected to turn on me. It was a Monday morning and I was deep into a side project. I'd been working on a custom shelving unit for a friend's new photography studio. Wood shavings were everywhere. My hands were dusty, and I was finally starting to feel like myself again. Clear-headed, focused away from the toxic drama. I hadn't checked my phone in hours. And when I did, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Darren, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail from Mom was sharp, unusually cold. I can't believe you try to sabotage your own family's financial future. Darren showed me the paperwork you sent him. He told me you threatened to take back part of the property, the part he's renovating. I raised you better than this, Alex. I stood there frozen, holding my phone with one hand and a chisel with the other. Then came the second voicemail. Darren again. His voice was smug, triumphant. Guess Mom finally knows what kind of snake you are, huh? You want to play legal games? Fine. But just know when she signs the quick claim deed next week, you're out for good. My heart sank. Quick claim deed. It took me a second to process, but once it clicked, it all made sense. Darren had convinced Mom somehow to sign over her share of the house. Damn. No lawyers, no protections, just a signature, and it would be legally binding. I wouldn't have believed she'd do it, but then again, I didn't think she'd accuse me of sabotaging the family either. I immediately called her back. She didn't answer. I texted, please don't sign anything. Can we talk first? No reply. I called Jenny. She picked up right away. Did you hear about the deed, I asked? She sounded out of breath. Yeah, I'm driving to Mom's now. I don't think she gets it. Alex. He told her it was just a formality, that it'll help him refinance the renovation loan. She thinks she's just getting out of his way. I clenched my jaw. He's not refinancing, he's selling. I know, Jenny whispered. But he's got her thinking you're out to ruin everything, that you're bitter, that you're weaponizing Dad's land easement. I sat down on the edge of the workbench, heart pounding. I wasn't even trying to do anything. I just told him the truth, that I own the deck and I'm not signing that stupid agreement. Jenny sighed. He's trying to isolate you. He's good at it. He was. And for the first time in years, I felt truly painfully alone. That week was hell. I couldn't focus on work. Every email notification gave me anxiety. I kept imagining Darren parading through the house, telling contractors to gut the kitchen, rip up the floors, install marble countertops on land he didn't even fully own yet. I had this image stuck in my head of him tossing out old family photos like junk because they didn't match the new aesthetic. I tried one more time with Mom, drove to her place, flowers in hand, calm, voice ready. She opened the door, arms crossed. "We don't need to do this right now, Alex." I kept my tone soft. "I just want to talk." She let me in but barely looked at me. I sat at the dining table, the same one where Dad used to read the paper every Sunday, and tried to explain. "He's not keeping the house, Mom. He's flipping it. He's planning to use your signature to leverage ownership. And he told me you'd say that." She interrupted. "That you'd twist everything." I blinked. "Twist? Mom, I'm showing you documents. I'm not twisting anything." Her voice hardened. "Darren's not perfect, but he's trying. He's been here. He's been involved." "You haven't." That one hit harder than I expected. I stood up, fighting back the sting. "You're right. I haven't been here. I've been working quietly, paying for things without being asked, building a life without demanding applause. But maybe that's why no one ever noticed." She didn't respond, just looked out the window. I left the flowers on the table and walked out. That was the lowest I felt in a long time. Worse than when Dad passed. Worse than when I first found out Darren was scheming again. It wasn't just betrayal. It was being erased. Like everything I'd done quietly, patiently, responsibly. All of it was invisible. And suddenly Darren's fantasy version of me was the truth everyone wanted to believe. That night I shut off my phone, didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sat in the dark, wondering how I'd become the villain in my own family. But something shifted the next morning. I woke up, showered, and pulled open the drawer where I kept all the old documents from Dad. There were letters in there, receipts, maps, notes written in Dad's blocky, steady handwriting. One of them caught my eye. Just a short note on yellowing paper folded in half to Alex for when I'm not around to explain it myself. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was written years ago, short and to the point. "I gave you the outer parcel and deck rights for a reason. Not just because you helped build it, but because I know you won't let it be exploited. I trust you to protect what matters, not just the land, but the memory." That was it. That's all it took. I stared at the note for a long time, then got up and grabbed my laptop. I spent the next 2 days digging, researching quietly, carefully. I called a property attorney I'd worked with on a small contract years ago, explained the situation, sent over the land easement and deck ownership paperwork. He called back the next morning. "Legally, he can't do anything to that section of land without your written consent. If he tries to include it in a sale, that's a misrepresentation. He'd be liable." "What if he already filed permits?" I asked. "Then we flag it, challenge it, force a halt." I exhaled slowly. "And the house deed. If she signs that quitclaim, she's transferring her ownership rights. He can do what he wants after that. But depending on how the deed is structured, we might be able to contest the valuation, especially if there's evidence she was misled." I thanked him and hung up. Then I got to work. I started drafting a formal cease and desist letter, not from me, but through the attorney. It would notify Darren and any future buyer that the deck and surrounding land were separate, not to be included in any title or renovation scope. I attached a copy of Dad's easement, the original parcel agreement, and the local zoning law that backed it up. Then I had the letter notarized, mailed, and emailed to Darren, the county property office, and the contractor he was working with, whose email I got from Jenny, who finally agreed to step out of the shadows. The contractor called me directly the next day. "Hey, I just wanted to double-check your name is on this easement." "Yes. And you're not authorizing the deck to be altered, removed, or repurposed in any way?" "Nope." Long pause. "Okay, that changes things." By the end of the week, Darren's contractor had backed out quietly. No social media post, no grand announcement, just a one-line email to Darren saying they were withdrawing from the project due to unforeseen legal complications. And then the permit office contacted Darren. Apparently, someone had submitted a formal inquiry about a permit being issued on land that wasn't legally part of the main parcel. That triggered a review, a slow one. Bureaucracy at its finest, and suddenly Darren's big renovation dead in the water. But the fall wasn't over yet because a few days later, Jenny sent me a screenshot. It was a Craigslist listing. No photo, just a vague description. "Charming family home, recently updated, great neighborhood, perfect for first-time buyers. Asking price a laughably high number. Seller Darren's LLC." I scrolled down and saw something else. A line in the description that said, "Spacious backyard deck, perfect for hosting." I laughed, but not in a funny way because Darren was still trying to sell my property. And now it was time to rise. It's funny how once you stop asking for a seat at the table, you realize how much power you actually have when you start building your own. By the time I saw the Craigslist listing for Darren's recently updated family home, I wasn't even surprised. He had a pattern, and it was always the same: inflate, spin, deny, and bail. But this time, I wasn't the one scrambling to keep the peace. I wasn't even mad. I was calculating, focused, and honestly, I was calmer than I'd been in weeks. The listing proved something important. Darren was in deeper than anyone realized. He was already trying to offload the house, probably to get ahead of whatever debt storm was brewing behind the scenes. And he still thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd roll over the way I always had. He didn't know I'd already lawyered up. The contractor dropping out had stalled his renovations. The permit freeze made selling tricky, but it wasn't enough. Darren was slippery. He could still spin it. He could still find some buyer desperate enough to ignore the red flags, especially if the listing didn't mention the pending legal disputes. So I had to be smarter, sharper. I had to set a trap when he'd walk into willingly. And I knew exactly where to start. The buyer Craigslist was too vague. But I knew Darren. He didn't rely on one method. He was probably fishing for buyers across platforms. So I started looking. Facebook Marketplace, Zillow, local FSBO groups. And after 2 hours of scrolling and filtering, I found it. Same house, same description this time, with photos, the freshly painted siding, the backyard angled just right to crop out the deck. A few blurry photos of the interior that still looked half-gutted. And under agent contact, there it was. Darren J. King Family Real Estate Group, LLC. A name he'd made up. No license, no real group. Just him and an email address I recognized from when he borrowed my Netflix login 3 years ago and never gave it back. Perfect. I created a throwaway email using a generic-sounding name and wrote, "Hi, I'm interested in the property you've listed. Saw it on Facebook. Looks great. Would love to schedule a walkthrough and learn more about the renovations." He replied within 10 minutes. Typical Darren. "Hey, thanks for the message. The house is still available. Schedule's open this weekend if you want a tour. It's a hot listing though, so serious buyers only. I've had a lot of interest." I responded as Sam, an out-of-town investor looking for a long-term rental opportunity. Darren loved investors. Investors meant fast money, no fuss, no inspections. Exactly the kind of target he could overpromise to and hope they didn't dig too deep. We scheduled a walkthrough for Saturday at 11 a.m. Now I needed someone to play Sam. I thought about hiring someone, but that came with risks. Instead, I called in a favor from someone who owed me, Greg Wallace. Greg was a former coworker now working in property compliance. We'd worked on a nightmare contract together years ago, and I'd covered for him when a client tried to pin a blown deadline on his department. He never forgot that. "Let me get this straight," Greg said after I laid it all out. "You want me to pretend to be a buyer, walk through your brother's half-renovated house, and ask a bunch of annoying legal questions?" "Basically," I said, but casually, like, "You're just a smart investor." He laughed. "Alex, this is petty. I love it. I'm in." We rehearsed a little. I sent Greg the deck documents, the zoning maps, and even printed him a fake buyer worksheet to carry. All he had to do was play the part, ask specific questions, push Darren to admit on record that he owned the deck, or worse, that the renovations included property he didn't have rights to. Saturday morning, I parked 2 blocks away. Greg had a mic in his shirt collar. I had my laptop open in my car, audio streaming live to my headphones. At 11:03 a.m., Greg knocked on the door. Darren answered with his usual fake charm tone. "Hey, you must be Sam. Come on in, man. Let me show you around." The first few minutes were small talk. Darren bragging about the appliances, none of which were installed yet. Then the tour shifted to the backyard. "Greg, nice deck. Is that included in the parcel, Darren?" "Yep. Fully part of the property. Just needs a little staining." Greg wasn't sure. "County records show a separate parcel line." Darren paused. "Oh yeah. Well, that's just a technicality. My family owns the land. It's all in the family. No one's going to fight over it." Greg got it. "So if I included the deck in a financing appraisal, that's fine, Darren." With just a hint of hesitation. "Yeah, totally. I mean, it's part of the living space, you know." Boom, a lie on record. Misrepresenting property ownership to a prospective buyer, enough for a formal complaint to the state licensing board. Even if he wasn't licensed, the act of posing as one while giving false information was serious. Greg wrapped up the visit with a few more probing questions. Thanked Darren and left. I submitted the audio file to my attorney that afternoon. He grinned when he heard it. "Want to make things really fun?" he asked. "Always. We send this to the listing platforms with a legal notice of misrepresentation. They'll yank the listing. Then we file a complaint with the zoning office for attempted inclusion of protected land in a sale. After that, we contact the buyer's agent boards even if he's not licensed. There's enough here to rattle him. I nodded. And the deed mom's part, we're getting there, but this pressure will make him sloppy. That's what we want. He was right, because by Tuesday, the listing disappeared from both Facebook and Zillow. A small win, but enough to rattle Darren. At 6:21 p.m., he called me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice tense. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is my house. You've made your point. Just stop before things get worse. I sent the voicemail to the attorney. Then I made my next move. Jenny had been on the fence about getting involved directly. She hated conflict. But now that she saw how deep Darren was digging, she agreed to help. Quietly, she went to visit Mom again this time, with paperwork in hand. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse. She just explained. Explained that Darren had lied about refinancing. Explained that he listed the home for sale before the deed was transferred. Explained that if she signed over her share, Darren could sell the house out from under her. It wasn't easy. Mom still saw the world through Darren-colored glasses, but by the end of the conversation, she agreed to pause the transfer. Jenny told her she needed more time to understand the legal side. That pause was all I needed because what Darren didn't know was that I had already filed a notice of intent to enforce easement rights with the county office, which meant that if he did try to relist the property again, without removing the deck and redrawing the boundary lines, it would be flagged instantly. He was boxed in, couldn't finish renovations, couldn't list, couldn't refinance, couldn't sell. And most importantly, he couldn't guilt-trip Mom into signing away her rights anymore, because now she had a lawyer, a good one, courtesy of Jenny and me. Darren tried once more an email, rambling half threats, half desperate pleas, accused me of ruining the family, said Dad would be ashamed, said I was tearing everything apart for some stupid patio. I didn't reply because this wasn't about a patio. It was about principle, and now the trap was set. He had one card left to play, and I wanted him to play it because the next move, that was mine. Darren didn't go quiet. He never does. But for the first time in his life, he was cornered, and it showed. A week after the listings came down and his contractor cut ties, I got another message. This one was civil, almost rehearsed. Let's talk for real this time. No games, just two brothers figuring this out. I didn't respond because there was nothing left to figure out. He just didn't know it yet. Behind the scenes, everything was already in motion. The notice of easement enforcement had forced the permit office to halt all pending applications involving the deck and the adjacent land. Even if Darren had tried to bribe his way through, the zoning officer overseeing the district was meticulous and by the book. More importantly, my attorney had filed a lease penance, a formal notice of a legal dispute involving the property, which effectively poisoned any attempt to sell it. That legal filing showed up on every property title search. It meant no bank would underwrite a mortgage for it. No appraiser would touch it. Even if Darren found a miracle buyer, no title company would approve a clean sale. The house was radioactive. But that wasn't the revenge. That was the setup for it. The real strike came when Darren made his final desperate move. See, my lawyer had predicted it. Darren, being Darren, would try to offload the house as is in a private under-the-table sale. No permits, no title insurance, just a quick cash deal to someone willing to gamble. And we were right. Jenny called me in a panic one afternoon. He posted it again on OfferUp this time, different language. Says it's an off-market opportunity for investors with vision. Says the deck's being gifted with the property. I checked the listing. Sure enough, same house, new phrasing, no mention of the legal flag, just bold promises and blurry pictures. That was all I needed. We called the buyer. Well, Greg called them. Remember Greg, my friend from compliance who played the fake investor during the walkthrough? Yeah. He called the listed number pretending to be a fellow investor, curious about the deal, said he'd heard about the property, and wanted to confirm the parcel boundaries. The buyer, some guy named Nick from out of town, admitted he hadn't done a title search yet, but had already given Darren a small deposit to lock it in. Greg pushed just enough. You sure that debt comes with the house because county records show a separate parcel? Nick got nervous. He told me it's all part of the sale. Greg replied, might want to double check that. There's a lease pinned ends on the property. You didn't see that. Silence. Then Greg, with expert timing, sent him the public document, my filing, and the easement paperwork. And just like that, Nick ghosted Darren. No sale, no cash, no way forward. 2 days later, I got another call from Mom. This time her voice wasn't sharp. It was quiet. Warren, I think I made a mistake. I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. He told me you were trying to take the house, that you hated him, that you were bitter and wanted to ruin the family name. And I believed him. I swallowed hard. And now she exhaled. Now I see a son who protected his father's legacy, who didn't ask for anything, who just wanted fairness. We talked for a long time that night about Dad, about the way Darren twisted things, about how people sometimes cling to one version of a person for so long, they stop seeing the truth. She admitted she hadn't read a single document Darren gave her. Just sign what he said was safe. She cried, apologized for doubting me, for not asking more questions, for letting him spin the story. I didn't rub it in. That wasn't the point. The point was she saw it now, and that meant Darren's final support pillar had just crumbled. The next day, she called her own attorney, one of Jenny's contacts, and initiated a reversal of the quit claim process. Since the transfer hadn't been fully recorded due to a clerical delay, the revocation was filed just in time. Darren lost access to her share of the property. He was livid. I know because he emailed everyone. A long, dramatic manifesto about betrayal and blood and legacy. He accused me of weaponizing Dad's death, accused Jenny of being a traitor, accused Mom of being senile. He even threatened to sue me for defamation. That last one made my lawyer laugh out loud. Let him, he said. All it'll do is get him deeper in the mud. But I wasn't done. There was still one piece left. The deck. See, the original build wasn't just a patch of wood behind a house. It was a memory. One of the only weekends Dad, Darren, and I had spent working side by side, but Darren had tried to demolish it, sell it, claim it, lie about it. So I reclaimed it. Literally, I paid a local contractor to come out and install a fence around the deck, just tall enough to make a point. On the gate, I mounted a small plaque. Private property access restricted. The fence didn't block the rest of the yard, didn't encroach on Darren's section, but it sent a message. It said, "This is mine and you don't get to use it anymore." Neighbors noticed. One even commented, "Looks like the deck's under new management." I just smiled. A month later, Darren's renovation dream was dead. The house sat half-gutted. No buyers, no money, no permits, no contractor, no mother on his side, no sister to vouch for him. And the bank, well, turns out Darren had taken out a short-term personal loan for the initial work, probably planning to repay it after the sale. But with the house unsellable and the equity split frozen, he defaulted. They put a lien on the house. Within 3 months, the property was listed again, this time by the bank for closure. And that was the final blow. Not because he lost the house, but because he lost the story. Darren always needed the story, that he was the leader, the provider, the one carrying Dad's legacy forward. But in the end, all he carried was debt and empty promises. I drove by once after the bank repossessed it. The place looked haunted. Boarded windows, overgrown lawn, the deck still standing untouched just behind the fence. A week later, the fence came down, not because I gave up, but because I didn't need it anymore. The point had been made. The legacy had been protected, and the memory, it was safe where it always belonged with me. I left a final note on the kitchen counter the day they started auctioning off the interior fixtures. Just a simple one. You always said I never stepped up. Turns out I did. You just never noticed. Darren didn't attend the auction. Mom came by the following weekend. We sat on the deck, coffee in hand, watching the sunset behind the trees, the same way we used to with Dad. She was quieter now, humbler. But there was a peace in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. "I'm proud of you," she said. I didn't need to hear it, but it still meant everything. That night, I stood alone on the deck and looked out across the yard, now stripped of illusions and schemes. Just quiet grass, fading light, and the echo of a battle I hadn't wanted but refused to lose. Because sometimes standing your ground doesn't look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like a fence. Sometimes it looks like silence. And sometimes it looks like winning. He tried to inherit the legacy, but I built it board by board, and I never let go.